going to cover the MRP feature of ShopKeeper software. So we go to the Material tab, and we open the MRP screen, and we check for shortages. And then if there's anything on this screen that's left over from the previous session, we just ignore it. Go into the refresh, pick how many days out in the future you want to work to, refresh the data, then you choose how you're going to run the MRP. And perhaps the simplest way is to do it by category. And that way you're not running it for all possible parts in your inventory system, but only the ones that are in a certain category. So let's pick category, and then update shortages, and then the category we're going to pick is hardware. And I'm not going to pick a subcategory. And then it goes through 1,670 parts and checks for any shortages that might be there. And a shortage is caused by a requirement of an item on a job that's one of the BOM items, and not enough parts in inventory, and not enough parts on order on a purchase order, or items that are on a purchase order but they're not due to come in soon enough. And any one of those things can cause there to be a shortage when you run the MRP program. So let's expand the screen a little and look at the details. Part numbers are all lined up with their descriptions and the manufacturer's part number, the first date where the shortage is going to occur, and the biggest balance at any given time that's going to occur, at the end of the run. And so then we also have a balance, the maximum amount that's going to be short. And then this is the minimum required. Sometimes you set that on a part number in inventory that you would like to have a certain number in stock at all times, and that's set up as a reorder point. And then this field is for the it's either an order or an expedite flag. If you already have enough parts on order but they're not due soon enough, then it just gives you an expedite, and you go off and look at the purchase order and decide if you can pull in the date to make the MRP happy. The default supplier code is in this column. The lead time is in the next column, so you get a feel for what the default lead time has been set for on inventory. And then because of the lead time, you need to order, in this case of this part, 21 days prior to the date when you actually need the part. So the order by date gets backed up by the lead time days. Then we have a reorder quantity column, and that's the recommended quantity that we normally would buy the parts in. Like this part, we buy at 1,000 at a time, and here's a part where we buy 500 at a time. So the simplest way is to sort by the supplier, or select only the suppliers you're interested in buying from at this moment. Let's just sort by the supplier, and some of the parts don't have a default supplier, and so we can't automatically generate purchase orders for them. But the ones that we have default suppliers for, and let's just pick this supplier and this supplier, OCI and AHS. So I'm going to limit it to just those two so you can see. So we can choose AHS and OCI, and now we're only looking at those two suppliers. The next thing is, at this point in time, since we're going to be creating a purchase order to buy these parts, we don't want to deal with the expedite. So I'm going to just mentally skip over that. So we choose to order 300 of those, 200 of those. We're going to skip over the expedite item. and then we'll go down the line and order each of these. So what's going to get ordered is either the greater of what we actually need or the reorder quantity, whichever is greater. So in this case, the reorder quantity was 500, but because we need 1,000 parts, it bumped the order up to 1,000. And when we've selected all the items that we're going to, we can come up and say create PO. And the first purchase order for the first supplier is created, and the heading is filled in, and the part numbers are filled in, and the due dates are filled in for the required dates that are on the order, and the quantities, and everything is there. We could go ahead and print out the purchase order, and the items will be on order. So let's close that PO and go to the next vendor. So we create PO, and once again, all the items are shoved onto the purchase order. All the due dates are lined up to when we need the parts, and all the pricing has come in as default pricing from inventory. And we can go ahead and print the purchase order, give you a quick view of what it looks like. And there's all the line items on the purchase order, all filled out and ready to send. So now let's deal with the supplier ordering the items that we don't have. So I'm going to turn off the ones that we've dealt with and view the other ones. So now we have our list. If we want to work off of paper, we can go ahead and print out a shortage list, and sometimes it's good to have this printed out on paper and just use it to make notes and work your way through it. So let me zoom in on one of these part numbers. So here we can see one of the part numbers. It's a helicoil, an 832 helicoil, and it shows that we have a reorder quantity of 1,000. We have no minimum reorder point that's been entered, and we don't have a lead time that's been set up, but if they were, they would be in this location. We have 25 parts in hand, so the balance is 25 at the beginning of this report. And then we have a job that needs parts, needs 150 parts, so now we're upside down 125. And then we have a purchase order that's being written, and it's for 1,000 parts. So at this point we have a surplus of 875 parts, but the problem is they're not going to be here soon enough, and so I would have to go back to this purchase order, go to that line item, and see if I can make the due date be at least by 12/15 plus maybe a little safety margin on it. Otherwise, it's going to keep showing up in my MRP shortage report. Here's another part number, an insert screw helicoil. And I have 3 jobs, each of which need these parts. And I need 40 on this date, 112 on that date, 286 on 12/24. So I'm going to be short a total of 438 parts. And so if I'm going to make a purchase order, I might as well make it for at least 438 parts because the dates are so close to each other. And if I have a minimum of maybe 500 parts, then that's probably what I'm going to make the purchase order for. And so then I would just make a note on this piece of paper to buy 500 and move on to the next part and the next part and the next part. And that's how you do your planning, by going through this this printout. And then you go to the purchase orders and start deciding what vendors you're going to use, and go ahead and make orders on purchase orders. Another good way to run the MRP system is by going to a all parts in an assembly. And so if I come and choose that as my choice and say find choices, and then I put the part number in that I'm looking for, and this would be the part number for the top level assembly. So I go ahead and I enter my part number in for the top level assembly. Make sure I get it picked off the list. And then it's going to go through, in this case there's 64 parts on the assembly, and it comes up with 7 of them that are short. If I want to just deal with the short parts, I can go ahead and print this out and then go about either expediting or ordering the parts. If you want a double check to make sure that every single part number has been dealt with, you can say show all items, and then when we rerun the MRP, and let me close this and delete these, and say go ahead and find shortages and put in that same part number. So now it goes ahead and it lists all 64 part numbers all the way through the assembly, all the way top to bottom. And that way, when you do a printout, every item will be covered. Only the ones that are showing in red are actually going to be short, but the ones that you're still positive on the part numbers, they will still be in the report, so you can go down the entire bill of material and look at each of the items. When you're on this form, any one of these columns you can choose to either do sorts or choose only certain part numbers to look at. And the same thing is true for each one of the columns. They all have a filter built into them. So you can either pick just certain vendors or certain part numbers, and maybe you only want to look at the ones that are expedite. And so I would come to this column and I would only choose the E's, and then that's the only part number at this point in time that I need to expedite. If I choose order, then now I'm going to see my 7 parts that are short, and these are the ones that when I go to print out will be on the printout.